here we go. Got another episode of the CoNcast kicking off. It seems
Have
like,
we? That sounds great.
Yes. You will not talk while I introduce. It seems like it's been about 18 years since we last recorded one of these.
You said like 5 minutes ago it's been 16 days.
5 minutes ago doesn't exist because I'm cutting off the recording before... This is
the
not a measure of time.
The conversion is roughly 1 day to 1 year, so it's at least relative.
We're all existing in dog years, except for Tittles, who exists in cat years.
Of course.
No, that wasn't right. Anyway,
Right.
We've got a show for you today. I am no longer going to say it's great.
Yeah, we've kind of peaked already.
Yeah, that was the peak.
We can guarantee quantity, but not quality.
No, we can't even guarantee quantity, because we're only doing this every 2 weeks.
And there's our third and final listener gone.
Oh.
Yeah, but we don't go on when we do, so...
Laz, wasn't it your friend that said that we needed to stop degrading ourselves over the number of listeners we had?
Yeah.
Yes.
Laz.
All right. I want that on the record, that Laz is the one that is being a jerk.
Jerk.
Yeah.
Jerk face.
Speaking of Laz, what is Laz playing?
Laz...
Segue.
Sure.
Do it before they realize.
Laz is playing Skyrim.
Skyrim, that's new.
Yeah. I've never played an Elder Scrolls game before. I received this I received this as a gift a month or two ago around my birthday, and now I'm playing it, and it's a lot of game. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
that is true. I'm kind of a cheerleader for Elder Scrolls stuff to some extent.
Mm.
How do you feel about it so far?
All right.
Sounds promising.
When it's good, it's really good. And like I finished the college and companion side quests, and I like them both a lot.
Yep.
And I like how the skill trees are organized. It's fun building up the character and everything. But man, there are a lot of just forts full of bandits. A lot of it's similar content over and over. So it's when it's good, it's really good. And I'm in the early stages of one of the other side quests right now, and it seems pretty cool. But a lot of the time it's an empty grind. It's like, do I really feel like clearing that one that new tower full of bandits just to get my archery from 87 to 88? I mean, really?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but the answer to that question in my case is no. I just don't bother. There's no need to. For me, having that option is much better than the last time I played FF6, where you just kind of walk for 2 seconds and then you're forced into some rubbish grind fest of dealing with some enemies that may technically be different enemies, but look exactly the same as some other enemy you met earlier, but they have pink hairbands on. So in that respect, I mean, I can understand the sort of concern, but at the same time, I feel like it's something that kind of happens in almost every RPG.
I'm a little bit OCD completionist sometimes about RPGs.
I can see.
Yes. If I have too many of those quest arrows up, I'm like, oh my god, do I want this to be the last game I ever play before I totally lose my damn mind?
Yeah. So that is a problem with if you're a real completionist, then you could just lose your life in Skyrim, and you could end up losing your life fruitlessly, because a lot of the kind of minor quests just really aren't going to be. And the other thing you have to bear in mind, I don't know if you've realized this yet, but a bunch of them are repeating and self-generating.
Yes, so I have noticed that.
Yeah, you will never kind of truly 100% the game in the way you might want to as a completionist.
I wasn't really planning on it, but after a while I built up enough of those quest arrows that it sort of became really, really easy just to go from one to the other and see them increase, almost exponentially. So
yeah, I've only been playing for around 9 or 10 days, and I think I'm going to just keep working on the meters and the skill sets that I have been focusing on in the early going for a while. And when I get bored, just hardline only the side quests and main quests. I found, even though I did try and do a lot of the side quests, you just build up arrows of stuff you can't be bothered with or you want to do later, and the map does end up looking kind of messy in the end. But
yeah, I haven't even gone into like the western half of the entire damn continent. I've only been, I think there's maybe 9 cities, and I've only been in 5 of them.
Well, this is kind of the thing that is going to frustrate you about it is in a way the thing I like about it, because I mean I've spoken before about the idea of the stories and the games and the worlds I like are ones where you feel there's more to it than you're able to see at the time.
Well, God damn, there's like how many just full books are just sitting around that you can read if you want?
Well, yeah,
there are
exactly.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of novels worth of hidden backstory content that you get the idea this game is built on.
No,
That's the thing I always think of when I'm playing an Elder Scrolls game. I see all these books, and I wonder, somebody got paid to write those books.
Right, just like
it's almost incredible when you think about it.
Tell me this, DP. Do you read all the books that you come across in Skyrim?
Oh God, please say no.
Only the ones about goblins.
No, I'll be honest. I actually have read some of them.
Oh my God!
I always check. I always read the first page because I can't help it, I guess. But then, sometimes I get kind of caught up in it, and then I read like a couple more pages.
All right, because I'm a kid. Oh my God!
Sometimes I get to the end.
I bet you read through the lusty Argonian maid.
I don't think I have.
Well, I'm a human being, so I just press the E key once and see if it increases one of my stats. And if it doesn't, then it is gone forever.
It depends if you're going to role play it. I mean, if you're a mage character and you really want to role play it, you probably should read all the books.
Oh, I'm role playing. I'm role playing as Tracy Flick from Election, who has to be in charge of everything. And if you get in her way, then screw you, because you're going to burn.
Wow, that is a reference that I never expected to have made on the CoNcast. That is impressive.
You're welcome.
So, DP, what are you playing now that we can extract ourselves from that quagmire for a few minutes?
I'm actually not playing anything at the moment because
perfect. Okay, let's forget about DP then. Let's think about Tittles. And going back to Laz talking about completion, because I think I know what Tittle's answer is going to be in terms of what he's playing, and it's something he's already beaten and is probably flogging to completion as we go.
And complete's in the name as well. Yeah, I'm doing same thing I'm always doing, that if you're a regular viewer, you're entirely bored of hearing my fed-up updates about, but
Oh,
yes.
See, that wasn't the answer I thought you were coming up with at all, so carry on.
Fine.
Oh, okay.
Your answer actually worked much better for the lead-in I gave you.
It sort of made sense for what you were talking about. I thought you were going to talk about the other thing, but then it sounded more like this thing, so...
Well, let's talk about both things.
Hey,
go.
I did think called something to be complete, and I'm still working on it after all this time. Pretty much it. There's a thing called casual mode, written by another guy who did a load of casual hacks, Hayate on the forums, and
not our forums.
Sonic Retro. And I've been building that in, tweaking some bits, changing some bits, got some cute little icons for it from Neo, my cool graphics guy. Josh and I have been working on some cool box art too. We've got a really awesome artist involved in that. Going to be getting some stuff back on that soon, so that's exciting. Other news, I finished Bioshock Infinite. Hooray, I played a game, finished it.
Nice.
It was brilliant. The ending makes it so much better than it already was. I'm totally going to replay it once I've got some of this Sonic stuff off my plate.
I figured you were already replaying it. That's
no, I would have just started again straight away, but I really need to motor on with getting this release done at this point. It's a joke at this point. It's been over a year. So...
Oh, well, that's another excellent lead-in for what we'll be talking about soon. Yay!
Yay!
Desperately
We're fast
grasping at these lead-ins.
That happened at the wrong time.
We're all lead-ins today, no payoffs. That's our goal.
And speaking of Bioshock Infinite,
there
what are you playing, Josh?
I am playing Bioshock Infinite.
How about that?
Infinite.
Infinite.
I said it like
Infinite.
that. Didn't I?
Yeah, I know. And I'm
you
off
asked
to
me
you.
afterwards. Is that how you guys say it?
It's true. I was a little shocked.
That's not how us guys say it. I was being...
It really should be how you guys say it. Yes, over the weekend, we discovered that there was a very, very good deal for Steam keys. I'm not completely sure that it was completely on the up and up, because after I bought it, my Steam key said that it was valid for the Asian version of Bioshock Infinite, but by God, it installed and played. That was posted in the Great Gaming Deals thread on the Con forums, by the way, if any of you out there are wanting to get Bioshock for cheap. As far as I know, the deal's still going.
After the first few hours, you just tune out the Aramaic subtitles, right?
Aramaic is not used enough in subtitles, actually. But no, it plays, I haven't seen like a language selector or anything like that. It seems to be exactly like the standard American version as far as I can tell.
Maybe you misread it as Caucasian or something.
Well, I'm given the themes of that game, I suppose that would actually be fairly apt, as awkward as it is. And
right,
I will say that there's not too much I can spoil yet because I'm only about 7 hours in. But it really is just like the most grim, jingoistic themed game I think I've ever seen. And it seems, it's hyperbolic for what America was actually like back in the early 1900s. But at the same time, there's enough ring of truth to it that it's really uncomfortable to go through it. Tittles probably doesn't feel the same way because obviously he's English, and I don't know what the history of, that sort of thing is in England, but it definitely rings true to an extent of the history of America, and it's really uncomfortable in that way, which makes it all the more brilliant. The one last thing that I want to say about BioShock so far, again, since I'm only part of the way through it, is the music direction is among the most interesting and brilliant that I have encountered in a game in a very long time. A lot of the music is not original. There are places where they're bringing in lyrics from popular music or known classical music tracks and things like that. And every time they have done it so far, it has been perfectly unsettling and perfectly attached to the mood of the scene you're in. I was telling Tittles before we got on the call to do this recording today that there is a bit that I just got through where you go into it's a monument essentially, and the backing soundtrack is Mozart. And it's not one of the most famous pieces of work by Mozart, but it's something you'd recognize clearly if you'd seen Amadeus, for instance, which is how I recognized it immediately. But
that's a great biopic.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's an awesome movie. But the music just fits the scene better than anything they could have written out of hand for it. And the way that they have just done that so masterfully so far just really shocks me, because I just haven't seen that in a game that I can recall.
It is very impressive, and a lot of the, I wouldn't call myself a particular fan of music from that era, but a lot of it is so brilliantly done, and a lot of the actual incidental music that was composed directly for the game is not only beautifully done, but is used sort of intelligently in the vein of a movie score, rather than just being, oh, here's a track for this character, and you're going to hear it verbatim every time they talk. It's just, there are cues and there are scenes that have that they feel like they're scored individually at certain points, and it works very well.
I really love the barbershop arrangement of God Only Knows.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up, because
that's incredible.
It's not very spoilery because it happens in
very early on,
first 10 minutes of the game, but it does belie a larger theme of the game, and it's very unsettling. I found it very unsettling because, I heard the first few bars come in, not knowing that this song was in the game. And I immediately recognized, the tune, and as I got closer and closer to where it was being sung, it dawned on me what it was. And knowing the setting of the game versus, a song that was written in the 60s, it really just kind of messes with your head a little bit. And there's a lot of little things like that I think obviously become more overt as you go through.
Yeah.
Very cool, though. But yeah, before we go into today's topic, I just want to talk about a little bit, because we haven't really talked about what we're doing at Con, probably since the first CoNcast. We've been struggling for so long to get new content out for Final Fantasy VI, to get the coverage for the advanced version out there. Obviously, we've had coverage for SNES and really PSX for the same token, because they're virtually identical, aside from a few bug fixes. We've had that out there forever, and we've had it out there so long that it is far and away the worst game coverage that we have on the site. Despite the site being named Caves of Narsh, our Final Fantasy VI information is just so much worse than everything else.
And if you look at the Master Zed's site that we host, he even has a little dig at our game information on it, which is, it always warms my heart to read that.
Yeah, and since he doesn't actually do anything with Final Fantasy anymore, I'm sure he'll never even bother updating it, even once we finish. But the new section is finally coming together. I wanted to get it out in May. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, but I think June might be a realistic target for it now. And that'll be pretty sweet, because we've been working on it for way too long. It's going to be very much like what we did with Final Fantasy V last year. It's got a great new walkthrough, lots of new mini guides. We've got several people working on it whenever time allows, and things are really looking good for it. Several of you guys have seen, the new stuff in progress. You got to agree, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be fun on a bun.
No, I mean, the content's really high quality. For anyone who's spent much time in the Final Fantasy V section, which, I mean, you'd be forgiven if you didn't.
If you refuse to ever play Final Fantasy V?
Because, I mean, it is Final Fantasy V after all. But, if for anyone who's spent any time at all in there, you'd notice very quickly how drastic an improvement in basically every single possible way it is on our previous content for it. And it's just, the walkthrough is great stuff. Like, it's very, it's all very knowledgeable. Everything's very well organized.
The walkthroughs for those sections are really great work, and even though some of it's had to be, let's say, anglicized here and there, they have a certain tone and a certain, there's a personality to them, which is what it's something I always like. I like to be a little entertained.
Yeah, it's
just
great
done
stuff.
a great job with those.
But yeah, and I will say that, we are getting towards the end of this Final Fantasy VI stuff. Final Fantasy VI fans are really going to enjoy it. It's definitely going to be the best implementation of what the best walkthrough, I think, is. The walkthrough is great on its own. We're adding that extra layer of con awesomeness that is oft imitated, never duplicated.
Or maybe not imitated, but certainly never duplicated.
Well, that's not a topic that I'm going to want to talk about on the CoNcast, but it has been imitated in the past with varying degrees of success.
And other sections have been tried to duplicate in the past.
Yes, that also.
Yeah. But no, I was just going to... that's the thing that one of our, to toot the horn of this collective group, I guess.
Yay.
Like,
Except
that's the
for
coolest... Like, some of the side stuff we have, Jibriel's walkthrough is fantastic, but some of the side materials that we have as well are just, like, the maps that you've done, Josh. Like, those are really neat. You can click on the little square, and it's just like magic. You get all the random encounters up.
We're not going to have that for Final Fantasy VI, DP.
Well, we had it for 5, though. So
we do have it for 5, and it is a lot of fun to use, actually, for such dry data.
Why aren't we going to have that for 6? I demand action.
Because the overworld encounters for the World of Ruin, which are really the relevant ones, they're not as varied. They're not as varied for 6 as they are for 5, as it turns out. There's only about 15 different monster groups, whereas in 5, the map is divided into 64 chunks, and every single chunk has a different set of monster encounters. So, it just wasn't worth the effort for something that really is much more simple. There's also no boat in Final Fantasy VI. That is
which is a great shame.
Ever. Because with no boat, you can't have sea monster encounters.
There's an air boat.
Have it. Yeah, but there's only one encounter that is tied to that. So
Someone's
that
again.
is not particularly
Just put like a big icon of Doomgaze just
It's just
pasted on the top of the map.
Everywhere.
Over the top of it so you can't see it.
We'll do it at like 20% opacity, so you can't see it right away, but then you see it and it freaks you out.
It
Much
starts
like
off
running in-
invisible, it just fades in and then
No,
cuts the map up.
Like the first time you run into Doom/Deathgaze, I don't know, some of you guys probably knew about Doomgaze before you ran into him for the first time. I did not. I played the game close enough to release that there was no such thing as that sort of information. And I'm flying around in my airship, I'm feeling really good about myself, and then all of a sudden this winged demon from hell shows up and slaughters me. And I'm just like, okay, I am not getting in that airship again. But just to wrap up this little semi-digression, because I know you guys don't necessarily care to hear us talk about what we're developing, but we do want to get it out. It is going to be fun when we do. And if you have any time or energy to help us in that score, we've got little tasks that just about anybody can do. We've got some data entry stuff. We've still got proofreading stuff. You don't have to do it for hours at a time. Just 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes every other day would help us out immensely. So if you're hearing this and you want to help out, or you're already helping out and you want to help out more because you're a slacker,
I'll be done with my part soon.
So we decided to pull from the Con forums a little bit for our topic today. I'm not sure that... I think DP posted in this thread. I'm not sure any of the other three of us did. Laz,
No,
did you?
I did not.
Okay, yeah, so that makes only DP who have said anything about
What,
this at all.
you're not going to
'cause
ask me
Tittles
if I
doesn't
posted
post.
in it?
No, you don't post. Sometimes you post if it's something that I've done wrong that somebody else has noticed.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that's about
That's fair.
But
That's about right.
the topic today is to talk about our own personal Final Fantasy stories. We've all been playing games for a very long time. Final Fantasy has been around for a very long time. And everybody has kind of come to the series and experienced the series in a different way. So in order to maybe get a little bit more people talking about this at the forums, we're going to talk about it here where you're a captive audience and can't really stop us from doing so.
To be fair, I did post about it the last 3 or 4 times that topic came up.
Oh, well. This one was a little bit more specialized, I
Yeah,
think.
fair enough.
I think it's general, and it was by a brand new member.
Yeah.
So
No,
I don't know.
I'm
I don't
not
remember
saying-
that member's username right now, but who are you, dude? Thanks for the topic.
Indeed, I have absolutely no objection to stuff coming up that's been, touched on before. It's just that
Oh, you really
I've
have no
seen
choice
it
now.
before, so I don't always post
Yeah, let's see.
a similar topic. And if I'd posted in it, then you wouldn't get to hear the story now, and it wouldn't be interesting to you because you'd already read it. So,
Well, this is long form. We have a little bit more time to talk about it here because typing takes effort.
That
Speaking
that
of-
new poster that posted the Final Fantasy story topic is Arnie0107. So thank you, Arnie,
Thanks.
very
I
much
think he-
for this idea.
I don't know if he's been to the forums since.
It's not a
We
bad
get a lot of
topic.
that. Yeah.
That's not a bad
Yeah,
topic.
come on back, dude.
Let's see where we go.
You did all right. You're in the fold now.
Yeah.
So why don't one of you guys kick it off a little bit while I go get our returning.
Returning?
Returreting. It's a Portal reference, and not me just speaking terribly.
I thought you were mixing up returning and recurring.
I did.
Okay.
Actually, that's exactly
Yep.
what I was making up the reference part to try to cover my own butt, and it
Yeah,
didn't
it
work.
doesn't
Right.
work.
See, Tittles isn't
I'm
the
going-
only guy that can correct you on your mistakes.
Shut up. I am going to go get our recurring guest, Toddler,
Yay!
while one of you guys starts talking. So I will be right back with you.
Well, shall we draw straws?
So let's start off. Here's a fun game.
Sure.
Give me the year you first played a Final Fantasy, and we'll go in the order of who started first.
Well, Tittles, that
Obviously-
means you're going first, dude. Come on.
Let's go. Yeah,
You think
Tittles.
so?
Let's have you go
Probably.
first.
You want me first? The
Well-
first time I played Final Fantasy was in the space year 2000 AD.
Are you okay? I actually beat you. Weird. Okay. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well,
I'm surprised at that.
yeah, well, the thing you may not understand as as American types is that the first Final Fantasy we actually got over here, at least the first proper one, I don't know if we got any of the freak Final Fantasies like Mystic Quest along the way. I don't even think we did. First Final Fantasy that came out over here was Final Fantasy VII.
Well, that came out earlier than that, didn't it?
Yeah, by a few years, but it was about 3 years earlier, though we probably didn't get it until 98, knowing Europe.
Because I knew that was the first one you'd play, but anyhow. Yes, continue, please.
I did not know that, so go on.
Yeah, well, it was really kind of a coincidence. I used to spend my summers in London with my grandparents and visiting my cousin, and he was selling some of his old PC games, and in there was Final Fantasy VII. So I thought, I'll give that a go.
For PC?
For PC.
You first played it on the PC?
I first played it on the PC. I have never owned a PlayStation 1, and I didn't own a PlayStation 2 until about 2004.
DP, I also first played it on the PC, so come on.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, keep going, Tiddles. We'll find out my story in a few minutes.
Patience.
I will have tuned out by then.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't blame you. So I decided, I'll give that a go. I bought it, and I played it a bit, and I just sort of thought, this isn't all that interesting. And I left it for about 9 months. And then I picked it up again on a whim. Part of the reason I think I didn't get into it the first time is because I was trying to playing it with the keyboard, and you might already think Final Fantasy with a keyboard is going to be quite a bad experience, and you'd be right, but if you ever look at the keys that are assigned for Final Fantasy VII on the PC, it's the sort of thing Josh would probably do. It's not right. It's not right at all.
Yeah, it's the directional key buttons, and they don't even say what keys to press. It just says, select, cancel.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's why we have a guide on Con. For that very reason.
Because that was one thing I really wanted to put on there because it drove me insane.
Me too.
When I first had to play it. So there is a little more to the story going backwards, and I thought I'd save that till after you've had the exciting first time I played it, which you're all thrilled about. One of the reasons I bought the game was because many years before that, I used to read a Super Nintendo magazine called Super Play. And it was a great magazine. It was very humorous, had a lot of it had a real Eastern kind of look to it. They covered bits of anime and, just interesting things from Japan. And it was a really interesting magazine. And one thing they had every month was a thing called Final Fantasy Forum, where, Final Fantasy 6 or 3 as it was in the States obviously was a very popular game amongst importers, and one incredibly frustrating problem apparently if you imported it and played it on a PAL Super Nintendo was that you could get through the game and it would mostly work, and then it would crash at the ending, which must have been a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
So actually in one of their final issues they reprinted the entire ending of Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I think that the depth and the sort of just reading that, I thought, wow, this is a game with a kind of a depth of story and characters that I've just never seen anything like that. So kind of remembering that years later and seeing this Final Fantasy VII for sale was, I guess, what spurred me to pick that up from my cousin. I guess the rest is history. Also, thinking about it, I got Sonic 3 off my cousin as well, so it's just, there's a very bad history of getting addicted to things that he had first.
Very influential cousin.
Indeed.
Dear Tiddle's cousin, if you're listening to this, thank you for making him the cat he is today.
There you go. It's one of those things, if I hadn't bought that second-hand game there, what a difference there might have been. It's like one of those butterfly effect things. From one tiny purchase.
It's weird to think about like that, yeah.
Yeah?
It could have been cavesofFisherman'sHorizon.com.
Well, yeah, it would be by now.
That sounds beautiful. Josh, is it too late to make a sister site?
Yes.
Been down that road, not doing that again.
Do you mean Parasite Eve, Josh? Because that looked
Maybe.
so successful.
It's hard enough to keep one site going.
I don't know. It would have been hard to keep that site going. It wasn't exactly.
Oh.
Anyway, that was FF7. I got really into that. I started posting on a couple of forums. There's this big forum I used to be involved in, a Final Fantasy. It had a Final Fantasy walkthrough on it of FF7 back in the day, and that there was a forum for that run by an Englishman actually called Jazz, and I posted on that and became a moderator on that, and it was during that time that I started playing Final Fantasy VI on emulator, and that was a rocking good time as well. I had to interrupt that to go on a German exchange, which was extremely frustrating. All I wanted to do was come back and finish my game, but there you go. And obviously, after playing that for a bit is where I first found Con and started posting there, and then the rest of that's history. But, obviously they were good fun, so I started playing some others. I played FF8, and I played FF4, and I played FF9, and all the while thinking, it's starting to be the same game in a different hat, but I did enjoy them all, so I can't complain too much. That's about...
You? I think you can complain too much.
Well, yeah, I can complain a lot, admittedly, but, I've got to keep you guys grounded here. Okay, who's
I am
next?
certainly a bit more,
Yeah, you're
willing to endorse.
you're such a cheerleader. I just have to, take up the opposite.
I admit it. I am a bit of a cheerleader when it comes to these things.
As long as it isn't Final Fantasy V or Final Fantasy Tactics, you just hate entertaining class systems.
No, shall I just go since we're already talking about the ones that I dislike?
Sure.
I tried so hard. Well, actually, I didn't try terribly hard, but anyhow, let's see. For me, this would have been. It wouldn't have been too long after you played your first Final Fantasy, actually, Tiddles. A couple years later, I guess, actually.
Yeah, I forget how kind of young you are. I always think Americans all played Final Fantasy starting about 1985, but
yeah, well, no, I am a bit.
Now that would be a trick.
Yeah.
I first played. The first one I played was Final Fantasy X, and it was fairly early after the game had come out. I think it came out in 2001, and I probably played it in maybe 2002. I think. So I would have been like 11 or 12, something like that. And I first played it. A friend of mine introduced me to it. He'd played it with his older brother, and then he sort of showed it to me, and it was over the summer, and so we would basically, after baseball practice every day, we would head back to his house, and we would have Final Fantasy X going on one screen and Sports Center going on the other, and he'd be reading from the strategy guide, and I'd be doing the actual playing. So yeah, we basically, it's a long enough game that if you don't play a ton every day, which we didn't because we were doing other things too, that it sort of spread out for a good chunk of the summer, and just the entire, I really loved the game. I'm always one who's more interested in the stories, really. I'm an English major, so this isn't terribly surprising. But I kind of fell in love with the story of Final Fantasy X, and I basically finished it, and I was kind of looking for something to play next, and this friend mentioned, well, we've got Final Fantasy VIII here, but I've never actually played it, so I asked if I could borrow it. And
Sucker!
And so
I did.
You started. I always reckon your first Final Fantasies are your favourite ones, and you started with my absolute nemesis in the series, basically. Didn't?
Yep, purposefully. I did it on purpose. But
you knew this day would come.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started playing Final Fantasy VIII next, and I got into it to the point. It was to the point during one of the cutscenes when you're in Galbadia and you're trying to assassinate the sorceress, Idea. And the cutscene comes up, and Idea sort of approaches Renoa, I think it's that one, and then all of a sudden the game would just freeze.
Is that the one right at the end of the first disc?
Close to the very, yes. There's a
Right.
little bit that happens after you fight Idea, and that's the fight where you can get Carbuncle, and then at the end of that battle is when it kind of hits the fan and the disc changes. But yeah, so it's at the very end of the disc, but it froze every single time, and so I'm sitting here kind of freaking out because I really want to know what happens in the cutscene. It's a, pretty big dramatic moment. So I ended up buying it from eBay, but the shipping, it didn't get there for like 2.5 weeks. So I just remember it was just an agonizing 2.5 weeks trying to figure out what happened at the other darn end of that cutscene. But yeah, I finally finished that, and that probably would have been like a year after I played Final Fantasy X.
Isn't that cutscene pretty much where the good bit of the game finishes anyway?
Yeah, I was
waiting for somebody to say that.
going to say I blocked discs 2 through 4 out of my mind because that's when the game's like shortly into disc 2 is when was where the plot sort of started to come off the rails and I started to lose interest.
That scratch disc was doing you a favor. The original owner probably just, oh damn it, cut.
Those were the best 2.5 weeks of your life.
No, I do like Final Fantasy VIII. Mostly I recognize its characters aren't terribly good, and there are a couple other flaws in the game, like the entire silly orphans thing. I don't even understand why that's part of it. Like, it doesn't do anything for the game. Like, it doesn't.
Really is no need for it.
There's no need. You could take it out and it'd just be such a cleaner game.
The thing I've always loved about that bit is the way they have that whole big awkward scene in the ruins of that other garden, don't they? Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, we all knew each other when we were children. How about that? How did we forget that? And they all basically sort of stand there, but oh, this is awkward. They're like, oh, a big garden fight over there. Let's go and do that. We just gotta forget about that stupidity. Let's have some action. What just happened? Never mind. Ignore that. It was silly.
That's exactly the thing that for me kind of defines Final Fantasy VIII, because you've got, I think the plot moments, basically, they engineer some great plot moments. Like, you've got the lunar base is that's a very well done part. The taking over of the garden by that Norg guy, the missile crisis. Like,
wasn't Norg always in the garden, like ruling it from secret or something, and you just decide to go into his basement?
Well, no, he was always.
And he says, "I'm the Imperial Norg." Jabba the Hutt in a giant wheelchair.
Oh God, that's exactly what he is.
He really is.
I remember. I think he has a GF too that you draw from.
He was always in the garden. He was never asserted. He was sort of like a co-partner in the company. He was basically like Josh. What's that? The Moogle. What's his name? The guy who fake took over.
Oh, what?
That's basically what Norg is.
He's the Moogle. What's his name? Well, thanks for clearing that.
Moogle 40.
Moogle.
Oh, 30.
Oh,
okay, yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I wondered why you were asking me about that.
Josh, what was that? Moogle?
I didn't even remember that Final Fantasy VIII had a 4th disc. So if that was like a legit Final Fantasy question, I was done.
I guess Moogle 40s because I'm just thinking about 40s. I don't know.
Garden Master Norg was kind of my favourite. My two favourite characters from Final Fantasy VIII were Garden Master Norg and Fake President Dealing, just because they both had ridiculous, either all caps, stupid talk, or mixtures of caps, stupid talk, and it's just so ridiculous that I loved it.
Anyhow, to try to get this slightly back on topic, I guess, I ended up completing that and sort of like playing other games in between and not really returning to Final Fantasy for a year or two maybe, and then my family was living in a duplex, and we didn't have our computer hooked up. I was fairly limited, and so I decided that in my sort of extra time when I wasn't with friends, I was going to try Final Fantasy VI, and then after that I sort of just went down the checklist of all those other Final Fantasy games and all that good stuff. Complained a lot about Final Fantasy V. Last year I tried to play Tactics. after about 10 hours, I rage quit.
You didn't get 10 hours in.
Oh, no, I did.
You are so full
Well,
of
it may not be 10 hours as in it would take you 10 hours to get there, but it might have taken DP 10 hours to get there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah, I mean, it's 10 hours of somebody who, clearly did not know what they were doing.
You're still in the tutorial battle, aren't you?
I'm in that one battle where you're up against the
Walking round
death
in
corpse.
circles.
You're up against the what?
The death corpse.
You mean
Or
core?
Core, whatever. The death core. Look, if you're calling yourself the death core, you deserve to have your name messed up by somebody. I've attempted that battle a number of times with a number of different combinations, and I don't know. The problem is it's such a challenge so early in the game that I have no story motivation to play it really. So it's the only motivation is simply for the fact of overcoming the challenge, basically. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIII, which is another horrendous showing of mine, I went up against the final boss a record 32 times before finally defeating it. But I actually wanted to, I'd played the story and I was actually into it, so I wanted to keep knocking my head against the cement wall, however much it might hurt.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, DP, my stalled iPad playthrough of FFT is right about at the same point you are. So we could pick it up and play it together.
Yeah.
Only I'll actually...
I'm not proud of it, but, yeah. It is what it is. Who's next?
I guess I'll go next. Well, I guess my Final Fantasy career started much earlier than either of you. But,
started much earlier.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm just... Well, I'm not that much of a hipster because, for one recurring theme throughout my gaming life is that I would always get a system, or a new system 3 or 4 years after it was released, or at least when the next one was released. I didn't get a NES until the SNES had been out for several years. Didn't get a PlayStation until SNES, until 2000. And,
I love the name SNES.
Yeah. So anyway, the first time I played a Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy IV at my friend Jason's house when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, so I would have been 7 or 8 years old. And at that point, the games that I really loved were mostly sort of just action games like Mario and Mega Man and Zelda and Castlevania. So when I was watching this, a game that was sort of driven by dialogue and menus and big and group and sort of party-based combat, regular RPG stuff, I'm like, what the heck is this? And I remember he wanted, it was a game he was in the middle of, so he wanted to show it to me, and he was stuck at the Terraria Magnet Cave part of Final Fantasy IV, if you, for those of you that have played it, and so sort of working together, I got the idea that we should talk that he didn't know where the heck anything was. We visited Troia, got the big cutscene on the airship. We spent probably 3 hours trying to figure out how not to have everyone instantly die in that cave.
Also good.
Yeah, because when he didn't know what to do, he just grinded until everyone had silver equipment, and that didn't really help for Magnet Cave.
Ooh. Yeah.
We were 8 years old. Give us a break. So we sort of figured all that out, and not sleeping at all, much the anger of his mother, we went from Magnet Cave to, I think, Tower of Zot in one night. And, no, not even Tower of Zot. Went from there to Tower of Babel in one night.
Seems a long way.
It's a ways, but anyway, I was hooked. And I didn't own very many NES games even. I mostly rented them. So I went and looked for a Final Fantasy game that I could play, and I found Final Fantasy 1 at my local Errol's video rental store, which is not something that exists anymore, I think. And
it's not anything that anybody else knew
I've
about.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think they sell like stereos now or something, whatever. But so I got Final Fantasy 1. I never made it very far in it. I think I got just the first 2 crystals, or orbs, my bad. And but that's what got the hooks in. I ended up buying Final Fantasy Legend 2 and 3, thinking that they were Final Fantasy games for the Game Boy.
That trap.
Yeah, but that didn't really happen. And that also sort of playing Final Fantasy IV, and then at Jason's and other friends' houses, playing games like Chrono Trigger and Mega Man X and Final Fantasy 3/6 inspired me to save up all my allowance and for the first time buy some game stuff with my own money. So I bought a SNES when everyone was looking to get a PlayStation, and then I accumulated a bunch of Final Fantasy and other RPGs. And then
is there a name for a hipster type person who only gets the thing after it's no longer cool? I feel like there should
I think
be.
that's I think that's just an uncool person.
No, like somebody who. Well, I mean, yes, but somebody else who does it like on purpose.
Well, I mean, you have those retro people that only listen to things on vinyl and only play SNES games. I don't know if there's a specific word for it. Well, so anyway, I wasn't really one of those. I was just a kid that was mowing lawns to try to get newer systems. So I didn't get a PlayStation until 2000, but before then I had played FF7 and 8 at friends' houses and got a PC version of FF7 to play, which unfortunately crashed at the Great Glacier in Disc 2.
Oh.
I never got to make it. I didn't make it past there until I was in high school in the early 2000s and got my own copy of PlayStation FF7. And I remember I bought my PlayStation in 2000, and my first PS1 game was Final Fantasy IX. And around that time, I started emulating everything and played Final Fantasy 2 and 3 on translated NES ROMs. I got a PS2 right when I started college, and for part of my freshman year, would hold myself up in my room while all my friends were drinking and doing college things, playing FF10.
Yeah.
And I first visited Con when I was doing all that, when I was playing PS1 games in high school, I think I was looking for a list of spells in Final Fantasy V, and I eventually joined the site on staff a couple of years after that, and I guess it all just leads up to last year when I finally played FF12, and I still don't know whether I like it or not.
You mentioned
That's
FF9.
how I feel about it too.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned FF9. You also mentioned emulating things. I
Yes.
think one point I forgot to mention that's probably fairly interesting is that you might have picked up on the fact that I never had a PS1 and I didn't have a PS2 until 2004, and yet I still played FF9. And I played FF9 by buying it and then playing it on a PlayStation emulator with the actual discs, which was, I guess, pretty novel. For the time, I mean, PlayStation emulators were around and about and people used them, but to use it as your kind of primary thing you'd buy a game for was pretty out there.
Yeah.
And the emulation state was not actually that great. At the time, I had to burn the discs onto ISOs and apply a crack to them, which meant whenever I played it, I got this. And if you guys ever saw old Amiga games that had been pirated or, old computer games and have this weird kind of electro music intro with cheat options and crazy stuff and weird ASCII art, and I had one of those on the front of it whenever I played. It felt very old school. Most of the stuff I do now feels old school back to that time, you see. So then it was like, wow, it's like old schoolception or something.
Hey, DP, what do you call a hipster who comes to it after it's not cool anymore?
We can call those Lazzles or something.
If you were really that hip, you wouldn't allow your name to be attached to it.
I'm really not
true.
that hip. Remember my suggestion? My suggestion
fair
was
point, fair
uncool
point.
person.
Well, Josh, you haven't talked about your Final Fantasy story yet.
Yes, tell us,
Well,
Chief.
That's the irony of it all. I haven't actually played any of the games.
Podcast
Podcast
over!
over!
Oh God!
Josh is Kaiser
Fake all
Soze.
along.
It's like the end of Sixth Sense. My mind is blown.
I see non-gamers.
How did he infiltrate?
No, it's actually weird. I was into the Final Fantasy series before there was a Final Fantasy
Now,
series.
that's just a regular
Thanks
hipster.
to, yeah, I know, right? Thanks to that, combination of being very young and therefore, fairly naive, and also having access to Nintendo Power starting from issue 1. So, Nintendo Power made a huge deal out of the localization of the first Final Fantasy. Huge. Previews in a couple issues, a feature in an issue, and then a standalone strategy guide for a game that wasn't even out yet.
For white mages, it'll never work.
The guide beat the game out by a month, I believe. I probably could walk over to my bookshelf and verify that, because I think I actually have the Nintendo Power Final Fantasy I strategy guide on my bookshelf now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's let's see, it would have been.
So kind of like me, you were sold on it by a magazine before you actually had the opportunity to play it.
Yeah, the only difference is that nobody had an opportunity to play it, in my case. It was summer, I was 9 years old, living in the country, didn't have kids my age to hang out with most of the time, and I just kind of thumbed through that magazine, or the strategy guide edition of a magazine, over and over again, because I thought that everything it was saying was so cool. And
Dork.
I had no... Yeah, I know, I was and am.
So you're a hipster and an uncool person.
Well, part and parcel. But I had no idea what to really expect from it. I had no connection to, Dungeons and Dragons or any sort of tabletop RPG type thing. I really had very little contact with console RPGs other than the original Dragon Warrior, which I played, and I was young enough when I played it that all I did was grind the entire time I had it rented.
Nice.
To this day, I've not beaten Dragon Warrior.
I played that when I was looking for RPGs like FF4 to play, but I didn't beat it until the Game Boy Color version over probably a decade at least a decade later.
Yeah, that was a long time removed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was invested in the game series before the game series actually existed. And the weekend that it came out in the US, I rented it. Kind of similarly to how I also rented the game from a local game movie rental place that no longer exists. Laz's, I guess, was a little bit of a local chain. Mine was just a little mom-and-pop place. It happened to be around the corner from where I played indoor soccer. So we were in the habit of going there pretty much every weekend anyway. I rented it the weekend it came out, played it all weekend, really enjoyed it. Played it the next weekend also, managed to rent it. Nobody had deleted my save file magically in the meantime because nobody else wanted to play Final Fantasy at that point. And eventually I saved up enough money to get it myself, and I never beat my NES copy. Never beat it. And that's just sad. But after that, I really was hooked, even though I never finished that game. I got Final Fantasy II within a couple weeks of it coming out. Final Fantasy III was one of the only 2 Final Fantasy games I've pre-ordered. The other being Tactics, if you're curious. And I played every Final Fantasy game fairly quickly until 9. 9 was the last main series game I played for quite a long time, because that was the point where I could no longer afford to play games. I finally managed to get a secondhand PS2 in 2006 or so, played through Final Fantasy X, and then skipped 12 entirely, and then played 13, which I absolutely love. And that, in the nutshell, is the short version of the story. After the SNES days, I just really didn't have the time, energy, or money to be completely dedicated to it and to follow the games and to be waiting in the queue for them to come out every time they came out. But I still think that the story is good enough because it just goes back so freaking far.
Tell me about how you got involved with kind of community stuff on the internet with it, and the good old AOL FF3 message board and all that stuff.
Right.
Oh,
That could
who
probably be an
remembers
entire
anymore?
new topic.
It really couldn't, because I gotta be honest, I was kind of around that, but I didn't get involved in it too much until I had a website to try to make people
I
go
see.
to.
You were just
Oh,
watching and waiting in the wings
thieving.
until you wanted to sell something.
Well,
It's like,
I have to
I'm
say
gonna
that
talk
part
about
of
the new FF6 section and also mention some people who help us with it if they want. Whole reason you made this podcast.
part of the impetus of doing the site was that I'd been reading the forum on AOL. So it wasn't completely one-sided. I doubt that I would have actually made the site if I hadn't been chatting about it from time to time with people on AOL anyway. But I certainly did become more and more active once I had a site that I could link to in my little forum signature
So effectively,
and be like,
you were
FF6
basically a
content.
spam bot before they were invented.
Yes, basically, and was.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything I do online is some sort of cop to try to get people to come to con.
I miss your old signature on Con. Normally this would be a plug for Con, but since you already hit, there's no point.
That is a good one.
But yeah, I feel like I probably have to sell my Final Fantasy story a little bit short, just because it has so many games involved in it that were first run. It's easier to come back and say, well, yeah, I came back and played Final Fantasy IV eventually, but it was way later. It's different to say that than it is to say, hey, I remember reading about that game before it came out, and I definitely had to have it. I just didn't have the money. But as soon as I had the money, I was making my friends play it, and I was playing it all summer long, both of which things are true.
Telling my cat all about it.
Yeah, I did not play any Final Fantasy game right when it came out until like the Game Boy Advance re-releases.
Yeah, I had such a small window where I was really, really an active gamer, and that window was when I was much younger. So once, even by the time the SNES was starting to get long in the tooth, I wasn't dedicating as much time to games. I never owned a SNES copy of Chrono Trigger.
Oh.
You never played that
Yeah.
until pretty recently, right?
No, I finally finished that game when we were doing the Chrono Trigger section.
Which
Wow.
is weird, because for being so into Final Fantasy, you would have thought you'd have picked up kind of Square's other big thing, right?
Well, and that's kind of the thing is, was I ever really that into Final Fantasy?
You made a website
And in
about
hindsight,
it.
it's kind of
Mm.
it's hard to make the argument that all of those things add up to that sum. In hindsight, anyway. Obviously, yeah, maybe that was just the best topic I could come up with for a site at that point. Because my own site certainly wasn't
Maybe
very
maybe it was like the flavor of the month right when you were playing it. Like, man, I'm playing Final Fantasy VI in 1997 and it's great. Hey, let's make a website. And then 16 years later.
Here we still
Yeah,
are.
exactly.
No, you basically
Yeah.
did what when people say, I want to make a website, how do I make a website? You basically did what we've always said don't do, didn't you? You said, I want to make a website, and I don't know what I want to make a website about. I just want to make a website. So you just made up a topic and put some pages up.
Then you made it.
Well,
Well,
you
yeah,
made
why
a
do you think
website.
I get off
Assistant to your
saying that other
partner.
people shouldn't do that?
Your fake Google 30, who then I ended up...
Your imaginary
becoming-
friend.
Such a great move.
Well, I'm not going to say I had that many friends to begin with, so hey, having an imaginary friend.
That took a depressing turn.
Always
Oh, it
does
always
with Josh. It always does.
Yeah.
Tell me this though, why haven't you played 12 yet?
That kind of fell into the same. Well, a big part of what happened was that was when I had to go back into an office again. So, I started to have commuting time each way every day,
You work from home
and
now.
I started. Yeah, but
Right,
I work,
yeah.
and I also have a toddler.
All right, that might throw a wrench into your
Okay,
video game
Josh. Kaylin wants to play too.
I mean- Well, okay, there's Kaylin's Final Fantasy story. She's been alive for one Final
She
Fantasy.
likes it a lot.
It's been Final Fantasy
She likes it a
13.
lot.
She used to dance and
Yep.
clap to the music while I played it. I haven't had time to play it in a while, so she's probably forgotten all about it by now. That's her story.
No, man.
We should have led with her
chord of
story. It was
Blinded
much
by
shorter.
Light, and she will be dancing and clapping again. Boom.
It's probably true, yeah. And that was her favorite thing because, yeah,
That's
the
all.
battles in
I
Final
haven't
Fantasy
played it
13
yet.
are
And I
just
know
so
that
insane.
theme is banging. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great theme, and battles are just so incredibly spazzy that they're perfect for a toddler's attention span.
Sounds like it was made for me. Boom.
Yes,
Right, there you
yes, you will be fine. Yeah. Hey, look at that. We got all the way to the end of the CoNcast and we didn't even bother saying goodbye. Well played, CoNcasters. Well played. Anyway, we got here, and on the way we listened to Neko Neko Mawai, our CoNcast theme tune. Also the Final Fantasy IV fanfare there in the middle. And here in the end, you're hearing Delightful Specchio from the Chrono Trigger soundtrack. Thanks a lot again for listening. We always appreciate it, and you can find us in all the normal places until we come back at you with another CoNcast later. See you later. Bye.